Sleepy Jean. Oh, what can it mean to a daydream believer and a homecoming queen?
Now, sit up straight and pay attention, everyone. This is a tribute to Dublin women, who are now officially classed as middle-aged. But, I hasten to add, well above middling in every other department. Even as little girls, we had middle-aged heads on us, that premature wisdom making us astoundingly intelligent. Don't be shy. Put your memory hats on and congratulate yourselves on emerging from the grey, analogue, patriarchal, homogenous theocracy that was Ireland in the 60s and 70s. Winters were grey in the 60s and 70s. Well, actually, it was grey all year round. Suburban greyness had a particular weight to it that could not even be lightened by the television, which was also many shades of grey. There was a sameness to most suburban roads in Dublin, a predictability tempered by surprise, resulting in yours truly running in terror from greyhounds, Alsatians and assorted mongrels, not a lead or a knower in sight, being as they were the last days of the laissez-faire dog owner. In fairness, I was equally freaked out by old sausage dogs and blind dogs missing one leg. There we were, river dancing before it became famous, around mounds of dog turds. Old men on big black bicycles and little old ladies with dowager humps driving vintage cars at 10 miles per hour, giving any girl child with an imagination enough colour to see her through another winter.
November afternoon 1970. Ubiquitous grey of suburban concrete, tempered by shadows and black tar macadam. Gunmetal clouds run with rain-filled, pot-bellied cumulus. Dublin mountain secrets are shrouded in an enigmatic mist. Damp dogs, familiar and solitary, stalk the neighbourhood.
Chilblained children run to shops for bottles of milk, large slice pans, and the evening press.
Snowstorm televisions transmit perfect childhoods in perfidious Albion.
Clipped and jolly voices invite us to make spaceships from cereal boxes, pencil cases from tin cans.
Implore us to create stuffed animals from exotic materials with words like shall and rather.
We laugh our snots up and down at their colonial enthusiasm, but secretly prefer it to the homegrown drone. Another turgid school day over, we carelessly rush off a bit of homework on the red formica table, impatient to devour the next most coveted Enid Blyton book. Old jolly well, spiffing and smashing, lower thirds and upper fifths so alluring, lacrosse and gymkhana so intriguing, midnight feast so captivating.
It has been twilight since midday. Green double-decker buses carry leaden workers home. The flames in the fireplace act out their own stories. Their animated oranges, reds and purples trumping the grainy, happy staccato from across the Irish Sea. The clothes on the line are sad and heavy, longing, like us, for the warmth of the summer sun. The kettle whistles on the gas stove. The Angelus bells ring, and Mammy makes our tea. Our daily missives inject adrenaline into the moth hour. Later, Daddy will appear on the doorstep with stories from far-flung places. We will speed ride imaginary bicycles to heat up our beds and sing ourselves to sleep.
Oh, dream maker, you heartbreaker, wherever you're going, I'm going your way.
Ah, yes. Those politically incorrect Enid Blyton books kept us chipper, along with Blue Peter if the wind blew the television aerial on the roof in the right direction. Anyway, back to the demographic conundrum. I don't know anymore where middle age begins and ends. Let's do the sums. 40s seems too young, and yet 45 is halfway to 90. And there's a lot of octogenarians around these days. What about 50 then? Halfway to a whole century? Sure, hardly a week goes by without hearing about another centenarian receiving one of those "congratulations on living this long" messages from the president. I wonder, is it something in the water? Those letters are flying out of the Áras to centenarians all over Dublin. In all fairness, the classification of 60s as middle-aged does feel a tad optimistic, unless you're planning to hang around until your 120s. Not being an actuary or an astrologist, I will leave it to others to gaze into spreadsheets or crystal balls. I'm not qualified to officially or unofficially categorise middle age. I am a bit of a moon tour though, and I have a lot to get through today. So, if you're under 55, listen and learn.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird.
Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the world. School in the swinging 60s and the cheap and cheerful 70s meant going to the local nasher basher. Take a sample cross-section of primary school kids from Dublin and put them in a time machine with the dial set to, let's say, 1968. They would more than likely crash land back to 2025, reeling like a H.G. Wells time traveller and displaying the severest symptoms of post-traumatic stress. Indeed, if Matthew Arnold himself, that renowned Victorian educational reformer, had time hurled himself into the mid-20th century, he would have rightly wondered why the 18th century Enlightenment had not yet reached the Irish classroom of 1968. Child-centred had not yet entered the educational lexicon. Maria Montessori would have been alarmed to see us standing around the wall regurgitating catechism questions for some deranged interrogator, also called a teacher.
Can I suggest you observe today's little scholars in any County Dublin suburb near you? Their tanned legs climbing into or out of four-wheel drives, wearing precision-tailored uniforms that would pass muster with both a five-star general and the editor of Vogue magazine. Even their sports gear is Olympic standard. Back in 1968, we wore our coloured clothes to the Nasher Basher, and they served for all activities. Doing sums, skipping, saying the Angelus. Your sense of self-esteem depended solely on the fashion sense of your mammy, and any random owl one who happened to wield a comb and scissors in the local hairdressers. You remember them. Pitch black or platinum blonde perm, held in place by a military-grade canister of hairspray, scarlet lipstick with companion cigarette, plaster of Paris makeup, and un-Parisian crimpline trouser suit. It was those scissors-wielding ladies, or a Mad Mary Barnett.
Because, you see, in 1968, every day was a depraved hair day. The solution was the same for everyone who didn't frequent the hairdresser around the corner. The hairband. Shove it out of the way and stay in denial. It did show off your petrified little face, though. Just look at the stock 1960s Nasher Basher photos, where we all looked guilty. And if you had siblings in the school, you were photographed together, looking like an identity parade. Certainly nothing akin to school photos of today, where all the kids look like miniature clones of Kylie Jenner and Harry Styles, or the spawn of Giselle Bündchen and Ryan Gosling.
If you showed 1968 kids a modern compartmentalised lunchbox, they would not recognise the contents. They would stare quizzically at fava bean hummus and breadsticks, pomegranate seeds and smashed avocado, feta cheese and orzo salad, plantain chips, almond milk, coconut water, Or God save us from ourselves, kale and pineapple smoothie. Where, they would wonder, is the squashed black banana sandwich in the Johnson, Mooney and O'Brien wrapper? Or those Calvita cheese triangles, or easy singles, individually wrapped, as the jingle went. 50% cheese and 50% industrial chemicals that burned the mouth off you. I don't know what the blondie kid in the box was smiling about. What with helping to prematurely kill off half the population of Ireland. No wonder back then that 40s was proper middle-aged. Club milks and bags of Tato have long since been replaced with dried mango slices, Kiwano horned melons and dragon fruit. Red or yellow, if you don't mind. It's all buckwheat banana bars and seaweed crisps now.
But back to those old sausage dogs and blind dogs missing one leg that plagued the roads of my childhood. Things have improved for their great-great-grandpups as well. So much so that I fear to venture into the supermarket without my spectacles. Otherwise, I may very easily arrive home with attractively packaged dog ice cream and dog yogurts. Jesus, these products need to be alarmed with a siren, warning that they are of the canine variety. I'm telling you, if the World Health Organization was to analyse the ingredients in modern dog food, it would probably conclude that dogs in 2025 eat better than the average Irish person did in the 1970s.
It's true, though. Having been fast-tracked up the evolutionary ladder, Dublin woofters are enjoying unprecedented levels of care from vets who are better equipped than the Mayo Clinic. The lifestyle of your average Dublin mutt rivals the extravagance of the court of Versailles during the reign of the Sun King. When you bring your newborn little turd factory home, you can enrol it in Puppy Training School, where it will follow a curriculum that will prepare it for the social whirl that is South County Dublin suburban living. This will involve regular trips to the dog grooming parlours, which are more sophisticated than any hairdressers I went to in the 1970s. Yes, folks, there are turd factories befouling the footpaths of my neighbourhood who have had more pedicures than the entire Kardashian family. Many well-coiffed poops will also have their likeness from a photograph painted professionally, something most humans will never have done.
Alienated bow wows can then learn how to be socially well adjusted from a dog behaviourist, dog whisperer, or whatever the hell they're called. Futile perhaps if you have farming kin, because after being mauled to death by its unschooled and uncoiffed country cousins, a South County Dublin dog will arrive home from its summer holidays in a shoebox spattered with cow dung for poetic justice. Its owners, though, attentive to the last, will have it interred in the pet cemetery, in a grave that might rival Napoleon's tomb. Anyway, if the Department of Education dumbs down the curriculum any further, it won't be a case of courses for horses, but courses for dogs. Except it's the dogs who'll be given the courses, doggedly dotting every T and crossing every I, because us humans will be barking mad.
Back then, to the healthy diets of 1960s Irish kids, it has transpired that the drink of choice for 1968 kids, red lemonade, was found to contain a few too many carcinogens. Indeed, if you consumed it with a Calvita triangle, it was probably the equivalent of a double-shot Americano chased with a Red Bull. And how would you explain bottled water to the 1968 kid? Especially if it did not contain an equal measure of that other carcinogenic beverage of the psychedelic era, orange squash. Now that was the stuff to give your teeth their marching orders. There's one sure thing. Very few of us over a certain age can confidently throw our heads back and laugh with our gobs wide open, like one of those deranged characters from a Hitchcock movie, without showing off the post-apocalyptic scene of devastation that passes for a set of teeth.
And now they're taking their gobs to dentists abroad, only to come back looking like Donkey in Shrek, or one of the Kennedy clan. You'd wonder how any Irish person over the age of 55 is remotely healthy or intelligent. Maybe it was the traumatic shift from old money to decimal. After struggling to master old money sums, we were suddenly told that decimal was easier. I had a foot in both camps, and that left me very, very confused, especially when pensioners, as we used to call everyone over the age of 65, kept asking me, "How much is that in old money?" That change sharpened our intelligence and has kept us sharp.
Anyway, I digress. Back to school we go. The contents of a 2025 backpack would have served an entire school in 1968. I find myself lingering far too long in school supply stores, retrospectively desiring ownership of sparkly gel pens, highlighters and multicoloured folders. And of course they have computers now. A 1968 kid would have been very envious of the 2025 kid bringing a miniature telly to school to watch Batman and Star Trek. This is why their bags are so heavy today and why ours were so light back then. But which is worse? The guilt of owning too much stationery or the psychological burden of ever-present fear? I'd go with too much stationery any day, when I remember what was waiting for us at the school gate.
Don't be fooled by the smile on her face. That was swiftly applied for the parents, the school inspector and the parish priest. Mother Malevolent kept what looked like the leg of a stool under her voluminous black habit, right next to the super deluxe industrial standard crucifix. This was menacingly flourished for criminal acts like not knowing your catechism, letting your shaky little hand make ink blots all over your headline copy, or looking at her in a funny way.
I never understood that one.
But that all paled into insignificance when it came to the sacraments. Mother Malevolent was a weapon when it came to preparing terrified, nay, petrified beyond reason, children for their first confession and first Holy Communion. Learning the catechism when you have not yet learned to read is a tricky feat.
I tell an elderly man in a miniature wooden house all the sins I have committed so far, with a fervent promise that I will try my very best not to commit any more. The penance ticket says,
6 Hail Marys and 3 Our Fathers with a glory be for good measure.
Clamped to the kneeler, I intone the words impervious to their gist. I go home for tea, unburdened by my most grievous turpitudes, a hollow child cured by arcane incantations, without excess baggage, certain of a direct flight to heaven, with no purgatorial pit stops, and I'm singing all the way. My dazzling soul in God's keep, if I should die in my blameless sleep. Three days later, veiled and dressed in a white as my 7-year-old soul, I receive the holy wafer from the hands of the confessor himself.
Yes, the dispenser of
Hail Marys, Our Fathers and glory bees.
But it doesn't take long for sins to take up squatting rights again in the hollow girl. One big mortler to replace countless venials. Through wrinkled, puckered lips and sloping eyes, Mother Malevolent had warned us portentously.
If the sacred host touches your teeth, it's a mortal sin.
My white shield is now emblazoned with a big M. My tiny mouth is not up to the job. It may have condemned me to eternal damnation in the fiery pit stocked by red-hot poker-sporting demons, enthusiastically prodding my tender parts to check if I am cooked. for all eternity, I will remain almost cooked. Anyway, it took me a few years to get over that. 3 years later, there was another sacred mountain to scale, confirmation. And I wasn't ready for that either. To be honest, I had no idea what it was all about. But there was a new outfit and a day off school.
I become, apparently, a soldier of Christ. I'd like to be any other kind of soldier, but the Irish Army doesn't hire girls in 1970. I kneel before an ancient bishop. He asks me,
What is baptism, my child?
Ditching the official catechism version, I tell it in my own words, while Mother Malevolent chews her own teeth with rage. The bishop seems happy enough. He also looks like he'll be dead within the week. I could be dead before him if the evil one has her way.
OK then, back to the classroom we go. The other nasher-basher teachers were only a half step further up the pedagogical insensitivity ladder than Mother Malevolent. More hags on a blasted heath than Miss Jean Brodis. Unlike her, they were all well past their prime. We were not their creme de la creme. They whacked us with rulers if we couldn't do mental arithmetic like automatons. They frothed at the mouth before whacking us as rulers if we couldn't recite the Our Father in Irish. If you didn't have a photographic memory, you were consigned to the dunce's row. Creativity and imagination were not regarded as desirable attributes. You would only survive relatively unscathed if you were proficient at Irish.
Now look, Adini Usul. I was not genetically designed to speak our native tongue. When it came to An Gaeilge, it always helped me to create picturi immacion. Grammar was beyond my grasp. I thought the Mocaneelic was a tribe, like the Tuatha De Danann. I imagined them as cross little wiry men marching out of the west. I thought Ruther Moore on Teal was some postmodern Flann O'Brien-esque tale about the adventures of a big bicycle. And as for the last line of our beloved national anthem, Shaliv Coniv a Rán a Bhín, I imagined Shawnee Connie as a little red-haired, freckled boy wearing a gansey, wielding a musket and fighting for Ireland's freedom. So, Adini Usul, I was in a precarious situation in the Nasher Basher Irish class, and Shawnee Connie was not coming to my rescue. With a bit of luck, the Angelus bells might ring at 12 noon before it was my turn. Then everything would stop and we would all fall on our knees to recite that strange tale of an angel of the Lord visiting an unsuspecting teenaged girl to tell her she was going to have a baby.
It also helped in the 1960s Nasher Basher classroom if you were adept at regurgitating arbitrary lists of stuff like the products made in the towns and cities of Ireland. Ropes, sugar, beer, whiskey, dates of battles, Clontarf, Boyne, Aughrim, blah, blah, blah. terrifying multiplication tables. And of course, never forgetting the significance of Oliver Plunkett's head, Daniel O'Connell's heart, or bits of heroes' clothing with bullet holes or rusty bloodstains. If you stood out in the wrong way, you were in for it.
If you stood out in the right way, you were paraded as a paradigm of perfection that every other unworthy snot-nose had to aspire to. This object was also known as the teacher's pet, and one was kept in every classroom. You remember, they always had their homework done correctly. They never uttered rude words like fart or belch. Their books were covered in fancy wallpaper. They were always picked to play the Virgin Mary in the Nativity play, recite a poem in the fesh, collect the copybooks, and perform any other subaltern duties in the heady social whirl of the 1960s convent Nasher Basher. They were Nellie Olsons to our Laura Ingalls.
But sure, listen, wasn't it grand, really? Just like the inmates of Colditz, we had our little survival techniques to escape the pressure cooker failed educational experiment happening in every Nasher Basher classroom. There was never any shortage of willing volunteers to flush the toilets, pick up the litter in the schoolyard, or mind the babies and junior infants. Our school even had a farm, and some lucky girls had the privilege of feeding the pigs with the kitchen waste after cookery class. Anything was preferable to being in a room with Miss Trunchbull's psychopathic sister, the one who had a 5 o'clock shadow by 12 noon, and I would have successfully tried out for the East German men's Olympic weightlifting team.
While the anti-intellectual classroom had little to offer, newspapers were more successful in sharpening my curiosity. My early love affair with newspapers was a whirlwind romance.
Paper girl. I was a paper girl.
Arresting articles, haughty headlines and killer captions, read in snatches of childhood idleness, before being twisted into firelighters, formed a chain inside my head. The mere spark of curiosity set the newsprint alight with promise, especially old ones lining drawers.
December 1969.
The evening press announces floppy hats and maxi dresses as the new look of the 1970s. The models, wearing the prophetic garb, have eyelids like cows and crooked smiles like camels. Yet they are beautiful, 1970s style. Only beautiful girls can carry off smirks like that.
In the Sunday Independent.
I read about Senator Edward Kennedy's young son losing his leg to cancer.
I worry about the pain in my jaw. Will they have to cut off my head? I wonder.
In the Sunday Press.
I read about survivors of a plane crash in the Andes resorting to cannibalism. Frozen strips of flesh will keep them alive. I will never again eat frozen fish fingers.
I read the television schedule.
Even for the stations we don't have. I read cinema listings for movies I'll never go to, show band listings, Gene Stewart and the Mighty Avons, Ray Lynham and the Hillbillies. In country towns I smugly dismiss being a sophisticated Dubliner.
I read the job classifieds.
And puzzle over the meaning of Girl Friday and linotype machine operator. I read the obituaries in case I know one of the deceased. I read my horoscope. Wednesday holds great promise, and on Saturday I will meet my future husband.
Like cryptic crossword clues, Lonely Hearts codes are an enigma to be cracked by older readers. The problem pages do not reassure me. They add to the weight of my fictitious concerns. I feel for
worried from Wexford
and
anxious from Arklow.
I'm not discerning. I,
like guilty from Galway,
might also be faulty and need fixing.
Newspapers are my comics. I try the simplex crossword in the Irish Times. The bridge and chess problems leave me perplexed. I fill in forms for everything you can send away for. Hair loss tonic, thermal underwear, fancy leather driving gloves, because I like to write my name and address on official-looking forms.
It makes me feel grown up.
My granny wisely observed that paper never refused ink. Yet newsprint inks my childish thoughts. The paper chain endures.
And of course, 99% of us were named after saints. Something I was not a bit happy about. The baggage of having a saint's name was a psychological burden. In the local Nasher Basher, I was surrounded by Marys, Bernadettes, Elizabeths, Patricias, Margarets. There was the odd Linda and Donna thrown in. Lucky them. Protestant girls, on the other hand, always had perfectly charming names like Penny, Debbie or Hazel. The kind of names that might crop up in Eleanor Brent Dyer's chalet schoolbooks.
There is no doubt about it. You can date a girl by her name. Don't even try to lie about your age if your name is Mary or Bernadette. No matter how much Botox is holding your face together, you have to be at least 55. I, of course, have retained my alabaster cheeks and could pass myself off as Ariana Grande if I wanted to. I just choose not to.
As a child, I coveted the name Darrell, after plucky Darrell Rivers in Enid Blyton's St. Clair's. God, I so wanted to go to St. Clair's and have midnight feasts of tinned sardines and peaches, play lacrosse, take part in swimming galas and compete in gymkhanas. Good, strong, two-syllable, androgynous names like Robin also appealed to me. Once, at a French summer course, I met a girl called Daisy. Up to this, I had only met daisies in books. Anyway, this Daisy, incredulously, looked like she had come straight from Sunnybrook Farm. She was well upholstered with ruddy cheeks and pigtails, fetchingly offset with denim dungarees and a plaid shirt. All she was missing was a store heifer and a fence to lean over. A perfectly lovely girl she was, though.
But back to my good self. Telling me I was called after the Bernadette who put Lourdes on the map did not impress me one little bit. I actually feared that I would have the misfortune of meeting the Virgin Mary myself, just like my ill-starred namesake. I'd made up my mind to dissuade her by telling her to feck off if she ever tried appearing to me. If she persisted, I would inform her in the strongest possible terms that I would be telling nobody about these unwanted visitations and that she would have to find another Bernadette of a more virtuous demeanour who would be worthy enough to receive her messages and dutifully pass them on to the appropriate authorities. In other words, she would have to find a teacher's pet called Bernadette.
Facing up to the fact that I wasn't a Robin or a Darrell, I remained Bernadette alongside the countless other Bernadettes of my generation. Things could have been worse, though, and I do appreciate that I could have drowned in a tsunami of Marys. Books, of course, would always provide the great escape. As soon as I was old enough, I took to loitering with intent around Rathmines Library on Saturdays. Let's call it my
afternoon delight. My Saturday pilgrimage to the object of my love, to the blushing sarcophagus of printed matter, starts early afternoon. Get off the bus in Harold's Cross, walk down Leinster Road. My destination, Rathmines Library, gifted to Dubliners by the altruistic Carnegie. Opened in October 1913 in the maelstrom of the lockout. Its classical facade, a perfect street companion for the Marrakesh Pink Town Hall across the road. In that half-light of a winter sanctuary, tiny wooden drawers stuffed with index cards are conduits to novel experiences.
Middle-aged and elderly men in patched corduroy and tweed with thinning elbows confidently navigate a course through the sea of index cards, tales in wooden tubs, master mariners of dewy decimal. mildewy decimal, seamlessly blending with the Stonehenge of freestanding bookcases. The smelly cocktail of must, dust and beeswax polish, a nasal delight, mingles with stale tobacco.
A library ticket is my visa to centuries of ruminations, contemplations, meditations, crossing cultures, religions, nationalities. I am captivated by the date stamps. This one hasn't been borrowed since 1968. Who was that person? I decide she was a stylish, young academic. I picture her in 1960s clothes. A
beehive hairdo, miniskirt, white knee-high boots, heavy eye makeup. Why has no one wanted it since?
The quixotic need to order a book is sometimes necessary. It arrives from exotic outliers of Raheny or Balbriggan. I feel an emotional link with the last reader. I picture a young man voraciously committing tomes to memory for discussion later in smoky bars. His eloquence will be earthy.
Once I even have to make an excursion to distant Pierce Street Library to pursue some obscure quest. Wiry little working men, stevedores on the docks perhaps, hover around the cowboy novels, zane grey page-turners like Sunset Pass and Robber's Roost. Care-worn women replenish their supply of Mills and Boon. Secretary Wife and Cupboard Love will be carried home in string bags with cabbage and carrots, biscuits and bread. My only teenage post is the brown envelope with the window announcing my overdue notice and fine.
But no matter how many books you read, career choices for girls who did their leaving certificate in 1977 were limited and uninspiring. Most went on to do the ubiquitous secretarial or commercial course, after which they invariably ended up working for bosses of the male persuasion. I did try to learn typing myself, but let's just say it didn't work out. In the late 1970s, I considered myself to be an ardent feminist. I gave myself honorary membership of that group when I became a typing school dropout. Here's what happened.
You've gotta make your own kind of music, sing your own special song, make your own kind of music, even if nobody else sings along.
Typing school dropouts. Set back in a terrace beside the flats and St. Ultan's Hospital for Children, the ailing period house, dowager of bygone edifices, is shrouded in the steam coming off the broth of the Grand Canal and the exhaled matter of exhaust pipes. Smog town.
The granite steps are broad and hard and mounted from a litter-strewn pavement. The once black front door is sandblasted from the winds of history.
2 evenings a week I will walk down the canal from Rathmines to Charlemont Street to learn, I'm told, a useful skill, as befits my female status in 1977 Ireland. I will learn to type.
The spacious room is filled with hefty Victorian desks, capped with antediluvian typewriters, black and sleek as anthracite, more resembling industrial printing presses for masculine compositors than organs of text production, humming harmoniums of business for young ladies learning to serve professional painters, political papas, flexing slender digits before the command,
"Take a letter, Miss Abel." Oh, Christopher Scholes, what would generations of diffident girls have done without your obsequious invention? Kathleen Lynn managed without your contraption. Medical doctor, Republican activist, suffragist, founder of St. Ultan's Hospital for Children.
My typewriting ambitions are vain. I'm not the stuff of typist. With my fat fingers and obdurate hands, my dearth of keyboard dexterity is egregious in 1977. The most avuncular pater or papa would not want my error-ridden efforts.
What is wrong with her? They would wonder. Why can't she tippity type, smart and brisk, like all the other good girls.
Sure, it can't be that different from embroidery or knitting.
That's where I encounter the ballroom dancer, who also has the urge to learn to type 2 evenings a week. Would she be better using her feet, I wonder? The moment our eyes meet across a crowded room of cowed and febrile key depressors, we stop, instantly realising the senselessness of it all.
Disturbing the leitmotif of the collective carriage return. Strangers. We leave the building together, sit on the hard broad steps and laugh like old friends at the nerve of us, thinking we could ever type for a living. 2 smart ladies quit. An agreed career about turn. Perfidious break from the sisterhood of secretaries. We are officially typing school dropouts.
Well, you've gotta make your own kind of music. Sing your own special song. Make your own kind of music, even if nobody else sings along.
Yes, listeners, career guidance for girls was doggedly conservative in the 1970s. Filing clerk, receptionist, the possibilities were endless. If you didn't learn shorthand, typing and bookkeeping, you could train to be a primary school teacher if you spoke Irish. A nurse, Irish not required. An RTE continuity announcer if you spoke Posh Irish. Or an air hostess if you were gorgeous, could learn how to beautifully enunciate announcements in Irish and could serve food from a trolley without spilling it all over yourself or the passengers while wearing high heels. Ah, yes, we were strategically guided toward those caring and sharing occupations. I fondly remember a few incongruous career guidance visits to my very own school from lovely girls in lovely jobs.
Career guidance for girls, 1977. Too old for uniforms, we play out our sullen angst, lounging like corner boys wearing our boredom lightly, school days waning like our threadbare elbows, the antechamber shudders with expectation, adulthood still provocatively out of reach.
Our heads have already left the building. Before our bodies follow, we are given a preview of jobs for the girls. The door opens slowly. 2 visions of secretarial respectability clad in green pinafores enter bashfully. They breathlessly regale us with the heady escapades of the bank clerk. Our wide eyes soon snap closed with boredom. We will not lie in bed that night restlessly dreaming of deposit books and current accounts.
Next week, perhaps, a flying trapeze artist or a deep-sea diver. We resume our furniture draping postures. The door opens slowly. Always slowly. Another twin set trips in, this time clad in white from miniature wimple to laced shoes. The lovely nurses, and they really are lovely, peddle their caring profession. Like the green pinafored girls, they leave with no recruits.
Next week, perhaps a taxidermist, an ophthalmologist, a private detective, even a goddamn teacher. We don't notice the door open. Festooned in black, she is smugly sanctified, has no twin, and is not lovely. Our incredulity is effervescent as she sells us the nunnery. Laughter explodes. She stabs us with her glare. And what if God called you? I lie in bed, hands over ears, humming loudly. Her words appear in cartoon bubbles, swirling psychedelically, each syllable booming. I am dizzy with guilt, high on the fear of becoming a bride of Christ.
biggest career goal for most young women seemed to be getting married. The blissfully happy times prior to the ceremony were the Dolce Vita days of the engagement. Having an engagement ring on your finger was indeed proof to the world at large that you were good enough for someone, and that put you several steps further up the socially acceptable ladder than your former classmates, who were still ringless, anxiously awaiting some knight in shining armour with a big Irish head on him to rescue them from the shelf. Remember the term spinster was still used back then? Weirdly, it was okay to be a bachelor. Go figure. No matter that you might have discovered the cure for the common cold, been nominated for the Booker Prize, or come first in Ireland in the Leaving Certificate, your head would no longer be turned by these silly feats once a male of the species chose you for himself. Your fine accomplishments would be replaced by a blissful vapidity, crowned with a visit to the happy ring house.
The one thing you didn't want back in those days was a little bundle of joy before the hands of church and state stamped the papers to qualify you for parenthood. Of course, it was the women who bore the brunt if an unimmaculate conception occurred. Years later, I am inspired to write about this fear after seeing, of all things, a drawing by Leonardo da Vinci called Expressions of Fury in Horses, Lines and a Man.
Disco flare-up. Flares flare out from my knees like the flaring nostrils of a warhorse, rearing like Leonardo's model for the Battle of Anghiari. Colts neighing for fillies, steam rising from flanks, snort.
Do you want a lurch?
I rear back in panic, blinkered by adolescence, blinkered with confusion, canter side saddle to slow set music I hate. The Dublin Rugby Club disco lacks the finesse of the Viennese Spanish riding school. I should have stayed at home. 1970s bridal brides send me steeple-chasing to the exit. 1970s mayors in maternity wear disincline me to lurch. David Bowie's
It's a god-awful small affair to the girl with the mousy hair
instills a fear into me more effectively than any mother superior. I'm tethered to those lyrics. They put a halt to my gallop. I'm exhausted from jumping obligatory fences, clocking up time faults, strictured by responsibility, reined in by convention. Those awkward days will be ploughed and furrowed by the draft horse of my memory.
I learned the truth at 17, that love was made for beauty queens and high school girls with clear skin smiles who married young and then retired.
And then came my first summer job in Jacob's Biscuit Factory on Bishop Street. The pay was good, but the general banter almost turned me into a contemplative nun. The machinery was loud, but the women's voices were louder. I tried humming furiously while pretending to listen, but those women were determined that I share their experiences. They were gifting me with their wisdom, and I had to acknowledge this with a grateful response. I did not need to fake shock or incredulity, but I did struggle to show an appreciation of their generosity.
The Valentines I never knew, the Friday night charades of youth, were spent on one more beautiful. At 17 I learned the truth.
Sex education on Bishop Street. The girls on the ganger are garrulous, munificent multitaskers, lifting rows of biscuits while sharing bawdy banter. Others inspect new-baked produce, rejecting imperfections. The garrulous girls swap tales of gynecology and obstetrics. I listen, horrified.
Accounts from the maternity ward fused with sickly scents of warm confectionery dull the appetite. I am shaken and stirred. Domestic pot boilers, confessional yarns, starry-eyed mythologies, all mischievously dealt for scrutiny. I am schooled in shibboleths, from Drimna and Donecarney, anecdotes from Crumlin and Coolock, fables from Finglas and Fairview. My education is complete. Henceforth, all my romances will be platonic. That summer at Jacob's Biscuit Factory forces me to consider the single life. How fitting it is set on Bishop Street.
It was that Jacob's Biscuit Factory summer that I did my leaving cert for the first time, and the result was disappointing. Rejecting all of the homely wisdoms and accepted career options of the day, I had a second go at the leaving cert in 1978, but that came with its own pressures. I was glad to get the chance, but always had that niggling feeling that I should have been a sensible girl and gone and done a good commercial course. How mortified would I be if it didn't work out this time?
For an average student like I was, the one thing that was completely within my control was simply presenting myself in the exam hall with a fistful of biros and a ruler. The rest was in the lap of the gods. As a repeat Leaving Cert student, the gods had already let me down once, so I could not afford any cock-ups second time around. I sit bolt upright in bed and realise 46 years have passed and things turned out okay. Be still my beating heart. But, of course, as legendary and brilliant English teacher Tom Harris in Rathmines Tech would put it, I was late for the early bus. It should have been a relatively calm journey on the 16 bus from Rathfarnham to the South Circular Road. But no, as the double-decker meandered and stalled, stopped and started, huffed and puffed its way without the luxury of a bus lane, I resorted to silent screaming.
The world turned black and white. Not so dramatic, as it was pretty grey then anyway. I was that mad woman in the 1950s B movie. I tried desperately to keep it together. My being late for the early bus was going to waste my year of being a second chance student. I was a second chance student, a repeater, and now I was late. I got off the bus at the top of the South Circular Road and steeplechased down to the Presbyterian Hall on Adelaide Road, a sobering exam centre. I just made it within seconds of the half-hour late limit, otherwise I'd have been turned away, and become a second chance student, a repeater, late and rejected. Mr. Toohey, the history teacher, was really very good at his job. He had me well prepared and I managed to do a pretty good paper.
He's got high hopes, he's got high hopes, he's got high apple pie in the sky.
Anyway, I managed to wheedle my way into UCD. Land of cigarette smoke, stale beer, greasy chips and coffee, whose complexity of flavour was a subtle blend of slurry runoff and creosote. Of course, back then, in the days of the Cold War, Belfield campus looked more like a gulag than a university, but we loved that brutalist arts block. Nobody cared what you did all year, and you were answerable only to yourself. You had one annual appointment every summer, and that was to turn up for your exams, if you felt so inclined. I think it's a bit different nowadays. A lot of the friends I made in this gulag were from beyond the pale, and so was their language.
As well as the obligatory F word serving as a comma, and sometimes even as an apostrophe, some more earthy permutations were frequently thrown in. These reference things like under or overperforming farmyard animals, agricultural machinery, or bovine conditions. The best us dubs could say in response was,
"Get up the yard, there's a smell of Benji off you."
But Jacqueen or Culchie, Dry Martini Tippler or Guinness Guzzler, there was one thing we all had in common. We had hope for the future. The future came in the shape of the next generation, and the cycle continues.
Rite of passage. That mild October day, I strode the same road that carried me unwillingly to school. 1978. A chump goes to college. 19 and ready for I don't know what. Aficionados will unlock the stock I never knew existed, exhort me to read a lot of books I never heard of, and write about them like a learned one.
The bus takes me to the large campus. I sit alone at the back, Brechtian and sullen. Look out the window with a faux intelligence. Inside, I'm schoolgirl excited. I follow the confident ones, careful to keep my distance, not wanting the rhythm of my swagger disturbed.
Henceforth, I will grapple with the ancien regime, metaphysical poets, Plato's Republic, Elizabethan stagecraft. I will be challenged by Chaucer's Middle English, intrigued by Joyce's Dublin, and puzzled by Beckett's disdain for time.
I am comfortably absorbed by the spread of European monasticism and the ensuing Reformation, disturbed and sleep-deprived by witchcraft, Jacobean tragedy and the Crucible. I am thrilled by Shakespeare's tragedies, strangely disappointed by his comedies, captivated by the Renaissance.
I am a blank sheet, an unformed thing. I sit agog in cavernous lecture theatres with hundreds of Irish teenagers. But how will I survive, surrounded by well-read brains? Should I, bravely, like a friend of Spartacus, own my ignorance?
By Christmas, our lexicon has expanded, our vocabulary increased. We bashfully articulate historiography, bourgeoisie, Kafkaesque, picaresque, mock heroic. I stick to candid country types and we become fast friends. We gormless youngsters earnestly grapple with this anachronistic yet sustaining rump of knowledge, a buffer to soften the landing into adulthood, a foundation on which to build.
Now, I watch my daughter with a frisson of envy as she embarks on that same journey.
Big Smoke was written by Berni Dwan and directed by Carmen Ortiz Victorino. Dramatic narration was performed by Adrianne Murphy and Tara Power. Lots of young people were involved in this production. You heard boy soprano Conor Byrne and button accordion player Alana Clark-White. Transition year students from Marino College took part in poetry and singing workshops with Abimbola Oloriri and Faith Olasogba. They are Yulia Golubieska, Zara Leah Forjun Dooley, Semina Sakia, Simona Koziriva and Mariam Keladze. And you heard their voices throughout, as well as those of Sophie Walsh and Alana Clark-White from Edmund Rice College. Audio production was managed by Declan McGlade, who was assisted with special sound effects by Oisin Clark-White from Edmund Rice College. Final thanks to Marino College teacher Sarah Jane O'Connor for her enthusiastic involvement. Big Smoke was made with the support of Comisiún na Meán's Sound and Vision scheme through the television licence fee.